protect everyone.
Hi there, hope you're having a great day. My name is Jeremy, and welcome to this video by Team GameSmiths. In 2017, Breath of the Wild released to both critical and fan acclaim. Heralded as one of the best games of all time, Breath of the Wild exceeded expectations by engaging players in a unique world. Freeform exploration, player-driven narrative, and immersion have all helped to keep Breath of the Wild relevant, even many years following its initial release. Even today, players are still finding secrets in the game, finding new challenges, or, in the example of what we see amongst the community, speculating on the larger lore and where Breath of the Wild fits. This is not only in reference to the much debated timeline, but also about some of the core tenets that have comprised the Zelda franchise over the course of 35 years. Like many others, I've found myself wondering what these mysteries mean, what story beats represent in terms of the larger narrative, and, for the sake of this video, what this means moving forward. If Breath of the Wild achieved one goal, it was capturing the imagination of the fans and investing them in the characters, the land of Hyrule, and the legend that is Zelda. Fast forward to 2019, and a new sequel to Breath of the Wild was announced, sending fans into a spin. Full of theories and speculation. To add to the chaos, Nintendo released the first trailer, an artistic masterpiece of intrigue and drama. The trailer, in under 2 minutes, provided fans with more questions than answers. Is that Ganondorf? What happened to Link's hand? Why did Zelda cut her hair? Yeah, that's right. And of course, the topic being discussed in this video: will Zelda finally be playable? With the recent trailer for Breath of the Wild 2 released by Nintendo at E3, a collective sigh was heard across the world when, in the first 30 seconds of the trailer, Zelda seemed to fall into an abyss. Yeah. Never to be seen again for the rest of the trailer, many fans, including much-loved Zelda theorists, surmised this put the playable Zelda question to bed. The common analysis suggested that Zelda would once again be in peril, with Link her only hope to rescue her. But I don't think I'm alone when I say this feels a little out of place for me. It seems too old school, convenient, and dare I say it, obvious. With the foundation of breaking conventions literally built into the DNA of the development of Breath of the Wild, the whole helpless damsel in distress fate for Zelda doesn't seem to fit the bill. In fact, it fits perfectly with Nintendo's clever marketing, carefully drip-feeding limited information to build the appropriate hype at the right time. I'm not saying Nintendo are trying to mislead us. Or am I? Now, to be fair, I'm new to the whole YouTube creator scene. Hell, I don't even really know what I'm doing. This is like my first video. But in preparing for this video, I've done my own research to help answer this question. But these are simply my opinions, some of which have likely been raised, maybe covered by some in the community, whether by posts or videos. And to the best of my knowledge, I haven't come across anyone who has put together a substantial argument as to why the titular character of Zelda might be playable in Breath of the Wild 2. The best reasons I've seen to date include that, well, her hair is shorter, so similar modelling can be applied as it has been done with Link, as well as, well, now she's free for Calamity. Following the first trailer, the question becomes more relevant based on a really convenient observation. Link and Zelda are seen together in the trailer. Whilst these reasons might apply, they don't really sway me as a person. To be clear, I've been looking at this theory from the perspective of a long-time fan who has introduced his daughter into the world of Zelda and Breath of the Wild. Having the perspective of someone younger, invested in the character and innocent to the factors of game development, commercial success and tradition, I found myself looking for reasons based on things I know are more tangible. As such, this video won't definitively answer whether Zelda will or won't be playable. I mean, anyone who claims to know this for fact either knows something the rest of us don't, I'm looking at you Nintendo, or have time travel capabilities. No, the reasons I will outline come down to some good old-fashioned knowledge of the world, the Zelda franchise, interviews, and research, mixed with a hint of speculation. With that covered, let's dive into the mystery. Will Zelda be playable in Breath of the Wild 2? Like I said, I tend to look at gaming from my point of view. It's a natural bias and one most of us fall victim to. Having a daughter and wife that have embraced gaming as an outlet and part of their life has provided me an opportunity to review that perspective. I mean, growing up I could identify with Link. He's a character a young boy can easily project himself onto, especially when it comes to adventuring. But what if you're a girl? Well, the reality is that's not so easy. And times, well, they're changing. Various surveys show a trend in gaming inclusivity. The percentage of female gamers is on the rise. In a survey in 2017, statistics show that 46% of gamers across 13 countries were female. More recently, an article in Forbes in March showed that 41% of gamers in the United States were female. And Asia, which accounts for 48% of the world's total gaming revenue, now comprised 40 to 45% of female gamers, according to Google and Nico Partners. And so what does this mean? Well, before you get started in the comments section, let me be clear. You can have whatever opinion you want on what that means. Whether you agree or not is irrelevant. The fact is that female representation in games is increasing. Indeed, it's also increasing not just in terms of players, but creators, developers, influencers, and more importantly, the consumer. It's compelling to think about. Ubisoft have recently been facing this head on, providing a female option in games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Valhalla, and even more directly as the protagonist in Phoenix Rising. Nintendo has built a commercial legacy on some key characters. Main examples include Mario and Link, although it should be noted that Sheamus has been a staple for Nintendo in the Metroid series, albeit under a helmet. Is it time for Nintendo to embrace a new female protagonist? If so, Zelda would provide the perfect platform. I mean, she already has a massive fan base, established lore, and more recently has proven to be a playable proposition in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Leading me to my next reason. Zelda is playable.
With all of us together, we shall prevail.
I have to give a shout out here to my wife. The idea for this video came from a discussion we had as a family. Following the trailer, my daughter and I were talking about a playable Zelda. As I mentioned, the trailer seemed, on the surface anyway, to remove this concept from the equation. As we pored over the video, my wife pointed out an obvious truth. Zelda is playable, just in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Initially, I dismissed the idea. Yeah, but that's not Breath of the Wild. But the more I thought about it, the more it got me curious.
I know that you are where you need to be.
Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity has been a major hit for Nintendo and was amongst the best-selling games on the Switch in 2020. Zelda, along with other characters like Impa, Urbosa, and Mipha, helped round out a roster of playable characters from diverse backgrounds. Not only was Zelda playable, she was also integral to the story. Playing the game and enjoying the excellent narrative, I think it's safe to say that Zelda's character owns Age of Calamity. We see her growth as a person, from feeling helpless to becoming a leader, and defying the odds stacked against her. Not only was her character more fleshed out, providing engagement from the player, her movesets, animations, combat capabilities, and interaction with the characters was all fully developed. Many have noted that Age of Calamity seemed to play more like Breath of the Wild in terms of look and feel than a typical Warriors title, and I tend to agree. Produced in conjunction with Nintendo, it's no surprise that many of the assets seemed on par, if not improved, from those within Breath of the Wild. So this begs another train of thought. What if this was also a testing ground for a playable Zelda? I mean, thinking about having this playable character, how does she move? What does she do in combat? How would she be animated in live gameplay outside of the cutscenes we've already seen? Well, Age of Calamity answers all of those questions, providing a full test run of how playable Zelda could work in Breath of the Wild 2. Moreover, the commercial success of the game can be partially attributed to Zelda as a character, both in the way that she is playable and the story beats that are shown in the game. Now voiced, Zelda provides an opportunity for Nintendo to have a voiced protagonist, without risking the character of Link, and potentially upsetting many fans with giving him a quote-unquote personality. Zelda can interact with Link and help to provide the narration of the story, as well as providing a unique style of gameplay, for example, more focused on puzzle and technical solutions. Some, including Nintendo Black Crisis in his recent video, have suggested that Zelda could be an option to have playable in the caverns, for example, while Link is traversing the Sky Islands. It's easy to think of this as a risky move for Nintendo, but subtle hints have stared us in the face in the lead up to the recent trailer that have since proven critical in terms of what will happen in the next game. And this leads me to my next reason, the Red Dead connection. In an interview following E3 2019, and following on from the first trailer for the sequel, IGN interviewed Zelda producer Eiji Aonuma, who revealed that a lot of the younger members of the team had been playing Red Dead Redemption 2. When asked what games the younger staff on the Zelda team were playing, and specifically what inspired them, Aonuma replied, "Something I did hear that a lot of people were playing was Red Dead Redemption 2. For those who haven't played the game or heard about it, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a Western narrative set in 1899 and surrounding the tale of Arthur Morgan and the Van der Linde gang. The game is considered close to a masterpiece in gaming circles, uncompromising, compelling and artistic, helping it to achieve a 10 out of 10 by IGN and a score of 97 on Metacritic. Universally lauded by critics, the game has sold over 37 million copies as of March 2021. So why is the success of Red Dead Redemption 2 and the fact that members of the team were playing the game during the early stages of development for Breath of the Wild 2 important? Well, one simple fact, and a spoiler alert for anyone who has not played the game Red Dead Redemption 2 by the way. That fact is John Marsden. The epic story of Red Dead Redemption 2 surrounds Arthur Morgan and his tale of, well, redemption. Coming from a hard background and fueled by violence, we see Arthur's character undergo a transformation that culminates with his challenge of the very institution he had loyally followed under the leadership of Dutch van der Linde. Making this redemption more bittersweet is the death of Arthur, who, in his final throes, provides character John Marsden the impetus to change his lifestyle, settle down, and enjoy a family with his longtime love, Abigail. To the surprise of most players, myself included, Arthur's death does not signal the end of the game, but rather the onset of an epilogue, where the player takes control of John. I don't know about you, but for me this was surreal and groundbreaking at the time. I played the epilogue with a new level of enthusiasm. I wanted to embrace this new character and invest in him like I did Arthur. This move is one of the reasons Red Dead Redemption 2 was able to achieve such critical success. It challenged what we thought about typical gaming conventions and turned them upside down. And it did so to critical and commercial success. So if I was a developer at Nintendo, and I was thinking about pulling off something unexpected, like having a change in a playable character in an open world game full of masterful immersion, mystery, action and story, well, I think I'd be playing Red Dead Redemption 2 myself. Another point here is that aside from the change to John, Arthur's connection to his gang and the camp as a means for player and story progression in the game also provide more reasoning for employing Zelda in Link's story in Breath of the Wild 2. I mean, think about it. Am I the only one who thinks it would be wild to have a camp of sorts in Zelda? Maybe this camp could be a place that items could be stored to, help counter the whole breakable weapons thing in the first game. Or maybe even a place where you could repair broken weapons. Everyone loved Tarrytown, and the thought of a camp or base for our main characters in this new game would be a welcome mechanic for the sequel. Who wouldn't want to build up a homestead or village of their own? Maybe a new castle town, or your own Kakariko. The thought is exciting, and I dare say one that has crossed the minds of many fans and developers alike. Nintendo, if you're listening, please make this part of the game. But changing from Link as the only playable character is not what a Zelda game is about, I hear you say. That's not Zelda. Well, I'll debate that Breath of the Wild has strayed far from what we think a Zelda game should be. From non-linear gameplay to player-driven narrative and an emphasis on multiple solutions to problems, Breath of the Wild has made a clear statement about what a Zelda game can be, which leads me to my next reason: challenging conventions. Apologies in advance for any mispronunciations. On the 10th of March 2017, heading into the throes of the release of Breath of the Wild, the core team of Hidemaru Fujibayashi, Satoru Takizawa, and Takahiro Dota presented at the GDC conference. The session was a best-in-class demonstration of how Nintendo approached the revolutionary mechanics at the heart of Breath of the Wild. If you have not seen the presentation, I highly recommend it, and I'll put the link in the description. Some key themes come up in the presentation. The core theme is all about breaking conventions, the courage to challenge the old and define a new style of gameplay. This is observed throughout the production process, from planning to development and refinement. Going further, Fujibayashi presents the challenges the team faced, with limitations on things like impassable walls, predetermined events, and, ultimately, predetermined outcomes. This is a point worth considering. What if Breath of the Wild 2 has potential for more than one outcome? The show goes on to talk about changing the player's engagement from passive to active, and that providing the right tools to the player, a new level of multiplicative gameplay can be reached, with infinite ways to reach a solution. We see this with countless videos on YouTube, with players still finding new techniques to traverse the environment or solve problems using the basic tools provided within the first few hours of the game. Going further, this concept is expanded with the solution about connecting everything in the game world. Let's pause on this for a second. Since the Curse of Demise, the connection between the elements of the Triforce has been universal and undying. It explains why Ganon never truly dies, and why having Zelda fall into a hole and sidelined for the rest of Breath of the Wild 2 makes literally no sense. The same conference also showed some unique concept art, some of which is not generally published. While some border on comical, like the alien invasion, one concept in particular, that of a one-armed multi-tool type Link, was shown amongst the many pieces of concept art. As it turns out, the recent trailer E3 at 2021 shows this concept brought to life. Another picture shows a floating castle with Ganon highlighted. Another prophetic image, perhaps? I don't think these notions are coincidence, and likely part of an overarching brainstorm that fleshed out ideas spanning more than one game. Another concept discussed in length by Mr. Dota is the physics and chemistry engine, which form the mechanics for game interactivity. A lot of effort has been put into these items, heavily linked with the Sheikah Slate. So, whilst the concept of Link's arm and the newly demonstrated powers like stasis reversal and fluid traversal look really cool, it would seem like a waste to remove the core mechanics that make Breath of the Wild so much fun, still to this day. I mean, who wants to lose stasis as it is now? Not me. No, I believe the developers, rather than replacing the options that are currently there, are more likely to add to them, creating an even more varied style to the players. I mean, who knows? Maybe Link has the arm and his new powers while Zelda retains the Sheikah Slate, an item she is already coupled with in Age of Calamity. This could provide her with options for problem-solving abilities, but also for combat as well. The Sheikah Slate was believed to contain further options for runes. Who knows? Maybe Zelda could also have a few new tricks up her sleeve. Having another playable character and expanding on the mechanics within the game would only enhance the options available to the player, further removing predetermined events and allowing choice. On a personal level, the thought of having options when it comes to characters with different mechanics is exciting. The same concept was applied to another successful Rockstar title, Grand Theft Auto V, with players being able to change the protagonist at will amongst an intertwined storyline. There were 3 options there, and you could pick them at any time. If there was one game title possibly more successful as an open world sandbox than Red Dead Redemption 2, GTA 5 would have to be it. The gambles Rockstar made for both GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 have paid off in terms of success, sales, and longevity. Embracing change, committing to something different, and ultimately growing in terms of gameplay and player engagement would have to be an attractive proposition for any game developer looking at the Rockstar success story. If Breath of the Wild started this movement towards true freedom by removing barriers in the game world for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, then it seems only likely that more changes in store with the sequel. Which leads me to my next and final reason, Aonuma and the Winds of Change. With the release of Skyward Sword, Nintendo released Hyrule Historia, a tome covering the history of the Legend of Zelda franchise and the first iteration of the much debated timeline. This book released in 2011 in Japan and 2013 elsewhere, translated in a version from Dark Horse Comics. In March 2017, the Legend of Zelda Hyrule Encyclopedia was published, detailing even more information to flesh out the Zelda lore. With Skyward Sword tackling the origin story, it seemed like Nintendo were beginning to take the franchise lore more seriously, moreover planning where the series would be going. If it needed direction, an origin story was a good place to start. It was a marked response to requests from many fans to provide more information on the lore established within the games, to feed the hunger of a populace who were investing more and more into a game world that seemed to grow more mysterious with each iteration. And it made sense. Nintendo had developed something rare in today's gaming landscape, a lore and mythology rich in stories, traditions, symbols, and characters. In his interview in the Hyrule Encyclopedia, IG Aonuma responds to many questions surrounding the franchise and the more recent changes coming in Breath of the Wild, which was at that stage not yet released. Aonuma makes a number of interesting comments. Responding to the changing Link's appearance, considered sacred amongst some fans, Aonuma commented, "Even if that was also a tradition, there were a lot of opinions about it, and I still don't know what the truth of it is." However, by asking, "Why does Zelda have to be this way?" we find a reason to change things if we can't come up with a specific answer. Prompted further with, "What things did you decide you would not change?" Aonuma responds decisively and simply, the element of growth. This concept he explains is the player growing, which is just as important as Link growing. His aim is to achieve growth within the player, and it lies at the core of his courage, the power to shake things up, make changes, and look to grow. In 2019, following the initial trailer of Breath of the Wild 2 at E3, Aonuma had an interview with IGN, and he was asked, "I know for a long time people have wanted to play Zelda, and there have been some games where you get to play Zelda for a little bit. It looked like Zelda and Link were hanging out a lot together. Do you think this is going to be the game which we get to play as Zelda? Maybe as a co-op game?" To this, Mr. Aonuma responded, "It's kind of interesting that you bring that up, because in Breath of the Wild, you see Zelda and Link together often too, so to go straight into the thought of co-op is very interesting to me." Kotaku's Jason Schreier asked Aonuma a similar question about playing as Zelda in an interview the next day. Aonuma said to him, "A lot of people have been asking that, and so I want to ask you, why do people think that?" Schreier responded saying she's free at the end of Breath of the Wild, and people have wanted to play as her for a long time. "I see," said Aonuma laughing, "but I can't tell you." I find this response interesting. I mean, why could Aonuma not answer this question directly? If Zelda would not be playable, or there were no plans to have a playable element of Zelda, even in a DLC aspect, then surely he could answer this question directly. Referring to the early quote from Hyrule Encyclopedia, if Aonuma and the team had decided this was something that would not change, then the division would be backed by a reason. You could argue that a good enough reason is that you play as Link in a Zelda game. But a counter-argument prior to Breath of the Wild would be that Link wears green garb, and the game has set dungeons, a linear structure, and you obtain items to solve puzzles. The core mechanics mentioned here no longer exist as of Breath of the Wild, and the game has been heralded as a return to form, likely the best game in the series' history. So what reason could there be for not having Zelda as a playable character, albeit for a portion of the game or as an option? I say this as open-minded as I can, because any reason I can think of would sound, well,
just asinine.
Closed-minded. I'd argue if the team had made that decision, Aonuma would have responded and provided a reason. My bet is that no such reason exists. So, in the spirit of player growth, the team are working on this very idea as part of Breath of the Wild 2. Maybe as part of DLC, who knows. It would also go a part of the way to explaining the lengthy development time, considering the same game world is being used. To close out the video, I'd also challenge the current analysis presented for the trailers. A clear theme is noted in both trailers, and it's the passage of time. We have many factors to consider here. Audio on both trailers seems to have reversed portions playing over the video. And whilst the messages contained therein are debatable, I think everyone can agree that the audio reversal is being used definitively in both clips, which begs the question why. Physical changes reflect the passage of time as well, whether forward or back. For example, Zelda has a change of hair. We all know that one. Both Zelda and Link wear different apparel. Ganon appears as a shelled husk, or lich, if you also like the theory from Zeltic and Monster Mates. Another symbol of extensive passage of time. In the second trailer, Link appears to be wearing barbaric outfits. I'm not going to throw out the Z word here, but the clothing and shield symbols suggest something from another time is at play. Heck, even the bokoblins and moblins look different. It simply can't be directly following the first game. There's another thing too. One of Link's new powers, stasis reversal, as I like to think of it, has commonly been suggested to be a mechanic where Link rewinds the movement of the object based on the after images back up the hill. No matter how you slice this, it appears to be a time-based mechanic. And then finally, the disappearance of some key things like the Sheikah Shrines, towers, Divine Beasts, and even the Deku Tree call into question what's happening when you look at certain shots. Is it in the past? Is it the present? Either way, they don't seem to appear. And if it is the present, well, some time must have passed since the end of the first game until what we see in the trailer. I mean, I know I'm stating the obvious, but Sky Islands also suggest a change over time, with an event triggering their appearance in the sequel. So with these examples alone, is it so unrealistic to imagine that maybe, just maybe, when Zelda falls, it might not be as it appears? One idea is that it could be a dream. I mean, after all, Hyrule's royalty are known to have prophetic powers, and it wouldn't be the first time in the series that a dream sequence, or something similar, have demonstrated a dark situation that wasn't exactly real. Twilight Princess, anyone? Who can forget that scene? But I have a theory, and well, it's just a theory of course, but it's that the order of events is not how it seems. I propose that the idea of Zelda falling does actually happen following a break in the bridge around Mummy Ganon. But in that scene, Link is nowhere near Zelda when she falls. The whole thing has bothered me a little bit. I mean, how is it that then Link grabs Zelda's hand only to drop her, when he's nowhere near her when the ground caves in? Well, what if when this happens the hand breaks from Ganon? Not to save Link or stop the malice that has corrupted him as many claim, but what if it attaches to Link because Zelda is falling and Link is about to dive into the chasm after her to save Zelda? I mean, it fits with his character. He's determined to follow the princess no matter what. And as Link dives, the hand grabs Link and fuses with him, exuding a power that reverses time, bringing the princess back up, where Link can then grab her hand. Now, I appreciate this seems speculative, but to be fair, so is every other theory out there. In this scenario, Link would retrieve Zelda from the abyss and bring her back into the game.
Now, I'm not saying this is fact. It's an opinion at best. It holds as much weight as the idea that the scene is a dream, or that Zelda survives the fall, or that Link needs to master a new set of powers to reverse time to stop this scene playing out at all.
What I do think though, based on the reasons provided in this video at least, is that Nintendo not capitalising on a golden opportunity to include Zelda more in Breath of the Wild 2, either as a playable character in part or at the very least an interactive participant in the gameplay, would be a missed opportunity. With fans clamouring for The Legend of Zelda to finally be about the titular character Zelda, Breath of the Wild 2 is the perfect vehicle for Zelda to make her own legend. So, what do you think? Do you think Zelda will be playable? Do you think Zelda falling is a diversion, or a clever lie? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you like this video, please give a like or subscribe. Being the first serious video that I've done, your input would be greatly appreciated. A huge thanks for watching, and to my family, Team GameSmiths, for their support. Thanks for being amazing. So long, and see you soon.
So that's why it's a good thing it's gonna be us!